Good morning. This is Howie, and I'm here to help you win with money. Here is another episode of Exposed with Math. So let's take a quick look at this article. Experts say you should have 3 times your income saved by the age of 40. And it goes on and it gives a couple tips. But one thing we're going to look at is where and who came up with this standard. So that's what we're going to look at today. If you do a quick Google search, this is what you will see. And we were looking for the original story. So Fidelity have this article here. How much do you need to retire? And it created a Fidelity rule of thumb. Save 10x your income by the age of 67. But look at the key takeaways. And that's what we're going to look at today. They built a really pretty chart. And here it goes. And this is what they're saying is the rule of thumb. But before we break this down, I wanted to show you something a little bit different. In this tab, I Google Fidelity Original Retirement 8X. Now you say, well, what's so important about this? And about 10 years ago, Fidelity came out with this standard. Let's see, can I see this? Here you go. And what this means is, you see this? It's roughly the same chart that they have today, which is this one here. But you notice, look at the value at 67. It was 8 times before. And the current one now is 10 times. Before, at age 55, it was 5 times. And today is 7 times. So what does that mean? So what that means is 10 years ago, when they came out with this rule of thumb, it was actually a lower standard. And they realized that the low standard, while it makes customers happy, I think they realized it was just too low. And even by their own standards, they revised this chart and they made it a little bit prettier, added a little bit more categories, right? Now they break it into 5-year increments. And here's the new rule of thumb. So now I want to show some math and explain what I think about it based on this numbers here, not on the original one. Because I think the original one was even worse than the current one. So we're going to expose this by math. Okay, next I bring out Excel. And the first thing I did was, let's make these numbers match. Use some formulas. So I built the table to match the chart from Fidelity. And then I made sure the formulas look okay. And then let's copy and paste. Okay, there you go. So first thing you notice, I just created any numbers. You can create this on your own. But I wanted to see, what does this mean? As you're younger, the go is right? It's 1 times your income. And so the goals are fairly low. And I would think even most people have a hard time hitting the 1x. But as you age, your income rises and you have a little bit more time to save. So the average person may have 10 years of working by the time they're 35. And what we're saying is, can they save 80,000 if they were making 40? Or if you're in a higher income bracket making 80, this is the go and here's the benchmark. And even these numbers are a little bit hard to hit. But as you can see, as you age, the factor goes a little bit higher. And here you go. So what's wrong with this? So let's break it down. The next thing I want to look at is Social Security life expectancy. Let's go here. Here is the Social Security table that will try to predict how long would you live. So for this example, if you hit 67, if you're male, it expects you to live 16.47 years, and if you're a female, 18 years. So let's record that in our spreadsheet. Added a few more columns. I created the male and the female here. Put the life expectancy here. So again, if you're 65, you're expected to live about 18, 19 more years. And I just created a formula. Divide this by the expected years. And so let me tell you what this means. If you average $40,000 income, or towards the end of your life, right? You made 40. You retire at 67, 10 times, you have 400,000. What this is saying is you can withdraw using simple math. If you live exactly to the average, which is 18 or 19 years, you can withdraw roughly 21,000 a year, and your money may or may not outlive you, because if you live past that, if you live 25 years after this age, your money will be gone, most likely. So this is a quick way to show you what this means. And one thing you notice is, look at the 90,000. You're only allowed to live off of 47,000, and if you made 150, you can only spend 79. So the first thing you notice is, most likely the only person who can afford to live that way is, during your working years, you are somebody who can live off of, right, 50, like this case, this is a roughly 50% of this income. Here is under 50%, right? And in this case, it's a little bit over 50%. So what that means is, during your working years, have you been able to live off of 50% of your income? And I know some of you will answer yes, but the reality is most people, I think more than 90% of people, cannot live off of 50% of their income. In fact, their magic number is closer to the income itself. And so why do the numbers not work out? Because if you withdraw too much, right? If you withdraw, let's say 10, instead of withdrawing 18, let's say you did 10, that means your money will only last 10 years, which means you're predicting yourself to die at 77. And if you have an illness, that will make sense. And you see what this does? This 40,000, you take out 10% of it, because you only expect to live 10 years. So that's the money that you expect to live off of each year. And this number matches closely to this. But for most of us, we need to make sure the numbers match the life expectancy. And that's where the problem comes in so far. I'll show you a second example. Second example, we're going to use 60. It's 21 for the male. And life expectancy for female at 60 is 24.56. So let's capture the numbers. And what I'm going to do is, again, we're going to plug this number in here. Right? Plug that number in here. So what does this show you? Same thing. The problem is, you will say, well, who's going to retire at 60 at a time their go? Well, sometimes in life, you're forced to retire. And this shares a great example with COVID-19. There are some of us who are forced into retirement, and you can't get another job. There may not be another job lined up, or you just have a hard time getting another job. And so there are people who are forced into retirement, or your company may offer you an early retirement package, which is worth maybe $100,000 or $200,000 or more, and it may make sense for you to take that package. And so by using the life expectancy of a female, you can see that this money now needs to last 24 years. Again, if you're in good health, statistics say you're going to live 24 years for an average female, 21 for an average male. But this lump sum is what you saved up. This is how much you can take out safely so that the money can sort of last 25 years. And again, if you're making $40,000, you can only pull out $13,000 a year. If you're making 90, you can only pull out 29. And if you're making 150, you can only pull out 48. And so you can see there's going to be a huge income gap. Most of us in retirement do not want to scale down our lifestyle. We want to be able to enjoy. You want to travel. You want to hop on a cruise. You want to vacation 5 times a year. You want to visit the grandkids. There's a bunch of, I don't know, weddings to go to, a bunch of other stuff to go to, family events. So you can see there's some challenges using this factor. Hopefully you'll see that. Now I'm going to show you a different factor that other people use. Now I built it the second spreadsheet and I changed some of it. And the reason why is the standard FIRE, the FIRE movement, financially independent, retire early, will use a 25 factor of your expenses. No longer do they care about income. If you figure out what your expenses are and you multiply this by a factor, that will tell you what your portfolio nest egg should be like. So the standard cases is $40,000 in expenses times the 25%, which is $1 million. And if you do that, the way this concept works is you use the withdrawal rate, which is, right, it's 1 divided by this factor will tell you how much you can withdraw, which is 4% of this amount, which means you can live off the 40,000. Okay? And this concept works the same whether your expenses are higher. And I model that out, right? If you're $80,000, $150,000 expensive, these are the goals for you using the 4% withdrawal. These are the amount that you will live off of. Now, why did I put in different factors? Some people don't think 4% is good enough. Some people think it's more than generous. You do, if you hit this number pretty early in your retirement, right? If you're trying to retire early, what some people don't like using is a 4% because the question is, can this last 30, 40 years in retirement? So there's another group that actually uses a 3% withdrawal rate, which means your factor is a little bit higher. You use 33% factor. Very little people I met had used a 40 times multiplier, which means you're using a 2.5 withdrawal rate. If your family have a history of dying early, you're not going to live long. Maybe you know that you're not going to live 20 years, right, or more. Some people do use a smaller factor than the standard 25. So using this, okay, this is the opposite way of thinking about this. If you know what your goal is, and if you're planning on hitting a 25 factor, you see 25 is way higher than this factor. But you can see your retirement, your portfolio is bigger, but it also means that it's going to create enough return for your lifestyle to match what you are used to. Whereas in here, these numbers or these factors were way too little, even using what they suggested at a young age. Because using this thing, they don't expect anybody or very few people to even hit 10 times a factor. I don't like that. I still think it was a low expectation. And I still think when you use this, it was even lower. So this was even worse, right? I think you guys agree 8 times, 5 times, whatever, was even worse. So I'm glad they upped it, but still nowhere near what a lot of other people use, especially the FIRE movement. Those who want to retire early, they have a much higher go, but the math explains why. You don't have to understand this. If you do understand it, wonderful. But there's another video I'm going to make in the future explaining the 4% withdrawal rate. And that will explain why a lot of us shoot for numbers like in this range. So, is it hard? It depends. Like I said in my previous video, you can design your system so that you can hit this number before you're 30 years old. I'm not saying you hit this number. If you're full retirement, you will hit this number before you're 30 years old. There are other people who will hit this number automatically, but not yet. It will come 20 years in the future because they saved enough in their 20s and 30s so that during their 40s and 50s, the portfolio will grow and the portfolio value will hit these numbers on its own. And again, I did a video on Coast Fire, but again, are these numbers impossible to hit? Absolutely not. Most people will tell you with a little bit of planning and a carefully designed right strategy, I actually do think most young people can hit easily hit any of these, right? 20 times your factor, 25 times. Again, 30 free, sure, I think you can hit it if you started early enough and you have a plan for it. So what's so important about this? This is a way to ensure that if there was no Social Security, the amount of money that your portfolio generates will be similar to the income that you're accustomed to. We use expenses because it's much more accurate. For most of us, your expenses and your income are roughly pretty close. Could be 5 or 10% within the range. Using an income is really not good. And what I mean by that is, it's actually possible for most of us to overspend, or we spend more than we make. It is possible for your expenses to actually be above your income. And so there's a lot of other factors to help you figure this out. Hopefully this video will give you a clue on how to figure out what number is right and whether or not you recognize that 10 times your retirement income, it's not enough. And if you backtrack, again, the whole purpose of this video is to say, if you backtrack this number, then you're going to realize even hitting this goal 3 times your income at 40 is still not enough. Because when you work the math back out, are you really okay with living on that little from your portfolio? Hopefully you guys have a glimpse of what we're trying to say. Most of my clients shoot for a much higher number, right? We are shooting for factors between 20 and 30 free. Some of us can shoot for an even higher factor of 40. Again, right? It takes discipline and planning and figuring out ways to do it. I hope that you will take this seriously, do some math, figure out what you want to do. If you need help, get a financial coach. Again, our job and our goal is to help you decide some of these things that you want out of your life. Everyone can win with money. Takes a little bit of planning, takes a little bit of setting some goals, do a budget, stay out of debt, invest properly, and anybody will tell you these numbers are very possible and very feasible. You don't need a special degree. You don't have to be working in a special industry or field. You don't need to be a math major to figure this stuff out. The spreadsheets I create will help you. You'll see the numbers yourself. You can set up a plan and then stick to your plan. The key is, can you do this consistently? Some people hit these numbers in less than 10 years. Again, I'm not saying that's everyone, but the FIRE movement is known for people who hit the 25 factor in 10 years. But if you want to do it like me, I will take 25 years, 30, maybe even 40 years to get there. And that's okay. If you shoot for a bigger factor, it's still much better than this factor. Okay? And that's what I want to get my point across. There's no one rule of thumb that works for everyone. You decide how much money you need to retire, how much expenses you plan to spend on. Maybe you're a person who loves new cars, like I do. I want to buy a new car. I don't want to ride my bicycle when I'm 60 years old. Whether my car is a Corolla, a Corvette, or a Lambo, that will be determined by the size of my portfolio and how much passive income I can generate from it. Hope you like this. Let's do this $1 at a time. Click, like, subscribe. Let's share this with more people. Hopefully they can learn something new. I want to create more videos to expose by math why some of these things that financial companies teach are wrong. They lower the standard to make the customers feel good so that they think they're doing well. And it would be so sad when you're 65 or 67 and realize, holy cow, this portfolio was only designed to last 10 years. And if I live 24 years after this, that Social Security check is just not enough. And that's not the way you want to get into retirement, saying, I've been bamboozled by some of these financial experts. I undersave, I didn't save enough, and I'm caught off guard. And now some people say they eat dog food. Not what you want out of your retirement. So give me a like, thumbs up. Thank you. See you next time.